On August 1st, 1976, Niki Lauda climbed into his Ferrari at Nürburgring. He was the reigning Formula One champion, a man known for precision, discipline, cold intelligence, and complete control. But that day, control disappeared. On one of the most dangerous tracks in the world, Lauda crashed. His Ferrari hit the barriers, the car burst into flames, and Lauda was trapped inside. For almost a minute, he sat in a burning car, breathing toxic fumes, while other drivers stopped and tried to pull him out. When he finally escaped, his face was badly burned. His lungs were damaged. His body was fighting to survive. At the hospital, things became so serious that a priest was called to give him his last rites. Most people thought his season was over. Some thought his career was over. Some thought his life might be over. But Niki Lauda was not like most people. Just 6 weeks later, he returned to Formula One. Face still scarred, body still healing, pain still fresh, and he raced again. This is not just a story about speed. It's about fear, survival, pain, courage, and the strange kind of strength it takes to come back from death. Then decide when the risk is no longer worth it. This is the story of Niki Lauda, the man who survived the impossible. Welcome to Beyond the Score. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, comment what you want to see next, and please like the video. Before the fire, before the scars, before the comeback, Niki Lauda was already different. Formula One in the 1970s was dangerous. Not dangerous in a dramatic, exaggerated way, truly dangerous. Drivers knew that every race carried real risk. Cars were fast, but safety was limited. Tracks were beautiful, but deadly. Barriers were weak, medical response was not what it is today. And death was never far from the sport. In a world where many drivers became heroes because of racing, they drove with emotion, with aggression, with fearlessness. But Lauda was different. He was not the most romantic driver. He was not the most naturally flashy. He did not build his reputation on mystery or glamour. He built it on calculation. Niki Lauda treated racing almost like science. He studied the car, he understood risk, he gave detailed feedback, he pushed engineers. He looked for every small advantage. Some drivers were artists. Lauda was an engineer in a racing suit. And that made him dangerous in a different way because he did not just want to drive fast. He wanted to understand why the car was fast. He wanted to know what could be improved, what could fail, what could be controlled. That mindset helped him reach Ferrari. And at Ferrari, Lauda became a champion. In 1975, he won the Formula One championship. Ferrari was back on top. Lauda was no longer just the intelligent driver, he was the best in the world. But even as champion, he never stopped thinking about danger. And that matters because in 1976, Formula One arrived at the Nürburgring. The Nürburgring was legendary. Long, fast, narrow, unforgiving. It was known as the Green Hell. A track through the forest with changing weather, blind corners, and almost no room for error. Drivers respected it, but so many also feared it. Lauda understood the danger better than most. Before the 1976 German Grand Prix, he raised concerns about safety. The track was too long for emergency crews to respond quickly, the weather was uncertain, the conditions were dangerous. Lauda believed the race should not happen under those circumstances, but the race went ahead. That detail is important because Niki Lauda was not reckless. He was not a man who ignored fear. He understood fear clearly. He understood risk, and that's what makes what happened so haunting. The man who calculated everything was about to face something no calculation could fully control. The 1976 German Grand Prix began at the Nürburgring. The weather had been difficult, the track was dangerous, and the second lap, Niki Lauda crashed. His Ferrari went off the circuit, hit the barrier, and came back onto the road. Then the car burst into flames. Lauda was trapped. Other drivers arrived at the scene. Some managed to avoid the wreck, others stopped. Arturo Merzario, Guy Edwards, Harold Ertel, and Bert Lunger helped in the rescue. They pulled Lauda from the burning car, but the damage had already been done. His face was burnt, his head and hands were injured, and even worse, he inhaled toxic gases. The burns were visible, the lung damage was more dangerous. In the hospital, Lauda's condition became critical. His lungs were damaged by the smoke and fumes. He struggled to breathe. His body was weak. At one point, a priest was called to give him his last rite. That means people believed he might die. Imagine that. 1 week, you're fighting for a world championship. The next, you're lying in a hospital bed, burned, injured, and close to death. But Lauda survived. And then he did something almost impossible to understand. He decided to come back. Not next season, not after a full recovery, not after his body had fully healed, just 6 weeks later. And at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, Niki Lauda returned. His face still showed the damage from the fire. His wounds were still healing. Putting on the helmet was painful. The scars were not only physical, he had nearly died in a Formula One car, and now he was climbing back into one. That is where the story becomes bigger than the sport. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is knowing exactly what fear looks like and still moving forward. Lauda was afraid. He admitted it. He was human. And he returned anyways. And at Monza, against all expectations, he finished fourth. Fourth place may not sound legendary if you only look at the result, but context changes everything. This was not just a fourth place finish. This was not just a race finish. This was survival made visible. A man who had been given last rites back in Formula One car, racing at the highest level while the world watched in disbelief. The race became one of the most powerful moments in Formula One. Not because Lauda won, but because he showed up. Sometimes greatness is not a victory. Sometimes greatness is returning when everyone thinks you are finished. But Lauda's comeback was not only emotional, it also brought him back into the championship fight. His rival was James Hunt. Hunt was almost the opposite of Lauda. Charismatic, wild, stylish, a natural showman. And Lauda was control. Hunt was chaos. Lauda was calculation. Hunt was instinct. The rivalry became one of the most famous in Formula One history, and after Lauda's return, the championship battle continued. It all came down to the final race of the season, in Japan, in the Fuji Speedway. Heavy rain, terrible conditions, and one of the biggest decisions in Niki Lauda's life. And the 1976 championship came down to the Japanese Grand Prix. Lauda led the championship. James Hunt was chasing him. Everything was set for a dramatic ending, but the weather was dangerous. Rain fell heavy. Visibility was poor. The track was wet. Drivers knew the conditions were risky. And for Lauda, this was not theoretical. He knew what danger could do. He had felt fire. He had breathed smoke. He had nearly died. And now, just weeks after surviving the Nürburgring, he had to decide whether to keep going in the conditions he believed were unsafe. The race started. Lauda drove a few laps, then he made a decision. He pulled into the pits. He stopped. He withdrew from the race, not because the car failed, not because he lacked talent, not because he was not competitive. He stopped because he believed the risk was too high. That decision cost him the championship. James Hunt continued. Hunt finished third. And by one point, he became the 1976 Formula One world champion. On paper, Lauda lost, but this is where the story becomes complicated. Because many athletes are remembered for that they win. Lauda is remembered for something deeper. He had already proven he could return from death. He had already proven he was brave. He did not need to die trying to prove it again. This is what made his decision powerful. Lauda understood something that many people in sports struggle to accept. There's a difference between courage and stupidity. Courage is facing danger when there's a purpose. Stupidity is pretending danger does not exist. At Fuji, Lauda chose life, and that choice did not weaken his legacy, it strengthened it. Because it showed that he was not controlled by ego. He was not controlled by pressure. He was not controlled by the need to appear fearless. he had the strength to say no. That may be the hardest thing for a champion to do. Lauda lost the 1976 title, but his story did not end there. In 1977, he came back and won the World Championship again with Ferrari. Later, after retiring and returning to the sport, he won another title in 1984 with McLaren. 3 World Championships, a comeback from near death, a racing mind respected across generations, and later a major role in Formula One beyond driving. Niki Lauda became more than a champion. He became a symbol of intelligence, toughness, honesty, and survival, not because he never feared death, but because he looked death directly and still decided how to live. So, what made Niki Lauda so special? It was not just speed. Formula One had many fast drivers. It was not just the championships. Many legends have titles. What made Lauda different was the way he understood risk. He knew racing was dangerous. He knew fear was real. He knew survival mattered. And that's why his story is so powerful. At the Nürburgring, he nearly died. At Monza, he came back. At Fuji, he walked away. And all 3 moments define him. That crash showed his vulnerability. The comeback showed his courage. The withdrawal showed his wisdom. The combination is rare, because the world often celebrates athletes for pushing beyond limits. But Lauda's story reminds us that greatness is not only about pushing harder. Sometimes greatness is knowing when to stop. Niki Lauda did not prove courage by pretending he was fearless. He proved courage by being afraid, understanding the risk, and still returning. And he proved wisdom by knowing when the risk no longer made sense. This is why the story still matters, not just in Formula One, not just in sport, but in life. Because everyone faces moments where they have to choose between pride and survival. Between what others expect and what you know is right, Niki Lauda made those choices in front of the world. And that's why decades later we still talk about him. Not only as a driver, not only as a champion, but one of the toughest competitors the sport has ever seen. This was Beyond the Score. If you enjoyed the story, like the video, subscribe, and comment below. Was Niki Lauda's comeback the greatest in Formula One history? I'll see you in the next one.